Alright, welcome to another edition of the Center for Enlightenment Productions. This is the Book of Remembrance Part 2, and we're going to start right here with the Rosetta Stone of psychedelics. Now if you remember, the Rosetta Stone was a stone marked with 3 different languages which allowed linguists to crack ancient Egyptian, to understand ancient Egyptian, because it said the same thing on all 3 sides. But one side was a hitherto unknown Egyptian language, cuneiform, not cuneiform, but hieroglyphs. So here you see the 2 main names of the spiritual entity Jesus or Christ, his body, the hidden manna. On, I guess that's going to be your left, you're going to see the psilocybin cap. So this is shown in almost, well, in most cultures in the art history, you can find the psilocybin cap in the ears. It's also called the circumpunct, and it's symbolized by the obelisk in the occult societies. You go to a graveyard, for example, and throughout the graveyard are strewn Masonic grave sites. So there are obelisks, which is the lost word of Freemasonry. So they're counting on the apple to save them, but they ought to be counting on the tree as well. On the other side, you've got the morning glory, the 5-pointed pentagram, which, when you look at the flower, it's a circle with a 5-pointed star in it. An actual morning glories, as we're going to look at, the hallucinogenic morning glory, the serpent, is kind of a pentagon shaped, kind of like the Pentagon War Factory. So here you see the morning glory tendril, the serpent or snake-like being, which was in the Garden of Eden. Let's do just a little bit. We're going to focus on the symbols of the morning glory, particularly on the unicorn, because the unicorn has an ancient history tied up with female psychology. You know, there's just an innate love in traditional culture of women, particularly young girls, of the unicorn and its magical horn, or one corn of oneness. So from that horn, that's the flower in its spiral shape, is the magic of this flying horse, or this horse with magical powers. And so it seduces women into a belief in unicornism. You see that? I think you can get that. We've started talking about that years ago, and talked about Seal and the song Violet, about a violet unicorn that causes a woman's mind to change. And we're going to look at some positive cultural understandings of that message, that this is a spiritual doorway that is more acumen, or more focused on female psychology and reasoning. But let's go through these step by step. That's a lot to swallow right there, and I wouldn't unless I had all this background, and you soon will have it too. If you've seen earlier editions of the Book of Remembrance, then you probably remember some of this material. Just touching briefly on Manta muscaria, we won't talk about the red bull of the mountain, particularly in this edition, except as it relates to the unicorn, the spirit of Lucifer, who can be disguised as an angel of light, and for that matter, a unicorn. Symbols for psilocybin. We'll focus on the hero of our show, the body of Christ, the supernatural apple of the Garden of Eden, the tree of life. But it's not the main debut today. We're going to focus on the unicorn and female psychology and the mysteries that our ancients told us in advance that we could break the riddle, open the scroll, if you will, and understand what's going on and why we do what we do. So here you see the lion and the unicorn fighting for the crown. Now the crown, I'll just sort of dip out of the picture here. The crown represents spiritual power over the world. So it's the rulership of the world. We've heard of the prince of this world, or Lucifer, who's currently trying to manage and control the world, get the oil, get the opium, push the opiates into America, cause opioid problems to just skyrocket, murder, violence. This stuff's just crud. And it's coming from powerful, powerful men and possibly women. Certainly, if you look into the societies, you'll find men and women at the top orchestrating these through secret societies, moving the drugs, moving the guns, stuff that our world no longer needs. So the lion has to win, and in the fable, the lion and the unicorn are battling for the crown, and the lion does win. As with the scriptures, the Lion of Judah does win. So that's the good news, we win. But let's start with the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. Now what that represents is essentially, the Sphinx represents Greek and Egyptian mythology to the fine point of the riddle or the mystery, but particularly riddles. So here you have the Sphinx, and you've got the great pyramid of Giza behind it. Now that pyramid in stone is a giant riddle. From that, people deducted the calendar, the 365 days, and a quarter year by seeing starlight come through one of the shafts into the king or the queen's chamber. They also were able to learn mathematics by measuring and the squaring of that whole temple structure. The actual pyramid is designed to the curve of the earth. And it used to have 444,000 white limestone cut blocks representing the 444,000 saints who will worship the Lamb at the end. So when that time comes, we'll be much more enlightened, and it'll be obvious to everybody on earth that this is going to go down like this. But for now, we've got that missing capstone, and we've got the riddle of the Sphinx. So the whole thing is a mystery in stone. Now here, if you look at this from a kind of a three-dimensional perspective, you can see that the Queen's chamber, and this is where it gets really interesting, has a air shaft cut in it that allows starlight to come in once every 364 and a quarter days. And that particular star that comes in is Sirius. You remember the Harry Potter series where good and evil are sort of mixed and reversed. Sirius in the Harry Potter series is a black dog, which the star's called the dog star. And so he's this good black dog that's there to help them, but he looks like a bad dog. But the ancient Egyptians called the Sirius star the most evil and wicked star in the night sky. And that's a twin or binary star with two stars spinning around each other. And they represent Satan and Lucifer. And they shine right into the Queen's chamber, so that some of the things that the Queen, what the ancients are telling us is some of the things that go through your head, ladies, are not only not your own thoughts, not good thoughts, but they're coming from a spirit that's not even your own soul or your own heart. The hearts can be pretty wicked, that's true. But the source of the attack is on your head, you know. What do you want? I want a man who has $20 million. I want a husband who's got an income for two for the rest of our lives. You know, sure, those are great fantasies. But what ends up happening is you got a bunch of losers who are real pretty on the outside, but really ugly on the inside. And you get fed these fantasies, spoon-fed from that spiritual dimension, but also somewhat from our culture. We're brought up on fantasies and not taught to be masculine about life. Oh, I missed the opportunity. The miracle didn't happen. Serendipity didn't show up. Now go for your dreams. Don't wait and say, well, you know, it was the man's job to be romantic and he blew it. God, you know, your whole life is so important. And you look at it that way because of this spirit that speaks in your head and tells you, no, you know, just sit and wait, just sit and wait, just sit and wait, just sit and wait in the grave is what's going to happen. So you got Sirius, this being, supernatural being, which, you know, attacks women. It's very cowardly and goes after your headset, of course. Fills your mind with doubts and fears. Here we're going to skip right to the fall. This is when Adam and Eve were in the garden. You can see the original French fresco from 1200 AD. It shows Eve covering herself with the serpent in the tree of knowledge. And the tree of knowledge is the Amanta Muscaria. The serpent represents the morning glory, the spirit of the morning glory, or LSD. LSA is the specific lysergic acid anamines. But it's very like unto LSD. And, you know, the original pentagram or snake flower harkens back to witchcraft, to black magic, to sorcery, to fallen spirits. You have it in red here, but kind of keep in your mind that there's the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which represents Satan. You know how he's always displayed as a red costume guy with a tail like a bull and hoof-like feet and horns on his head. And that's where that imagery comes from, that and the Eastern tradition of the red bull of the mountain or the Brahmin. Stuff that, again, we're not going to touch into. Here you have in this episode, we'll handle the red bull next. But let's stick with the unicorn for now. Here you have a Freemason symbol showing Lucifer as the snake plant, as the morning glory. And you have the Masonic symbol for the compass and the square. So you know that the secret societies know about and use the morning glory, or LSD, to try to stay ahead of the chattel, the people. Now let's take a look again, and you got the lion and the unicorn here. And here you see the baby hallucinogenic morning glories. These morning glories have a cloven hoof-like opening leaf structure. Now when you look closely at the unicorn, what you can see is the unicorn's hooves are cloven. And you remember the tradition of the Catholics, you know, oh, cloven hoof is bad. The tradition of the Jews, cloven-hoofed animals are unclean. Well, your unicorn's got cloven hoofs, just like this morning glory, the serpent, when it opens up with its leaves, it's got cloven hoofs. And of course the horn represents the flower before it opens, the magical unicorn horn, or corn of oneness. So these two are battling for world power, the Lion of Judah and Lucifer, or Christ versus Lucifer. Here you have the morning glory flower. You can see how it looks a lot like the actual horn of the unicorn. Here's the unicorn horn in pink, because the idea is to appeal to female nature, to get this spirit to be accepted into your psyche. We've all seen the little picture of the angel and the devil on the back of the cars, the woman with the tail of the devil and the wings of the devil. And so it's a push for you to accept traditional good and evil, that you're both, and that there's nothing you can do about it. But you know, if you don't fight evil, then evil spreads throughout the world. And you say, well, you know, it's just a little bit of just a little wickedness, you know. Here we have the unicorn in history. You see the queen showing the unicorn in his picture, and the unicorn looks very pleased by his picture. You've got the little goatee, because the unicorn and the goat are tied together. Again, another picture, a red-haired female playing the harp, kind of a Zeus-like swan built into the harp, and almost a camel-like goateed unicorn. Here we have a picture from the last unicorn, where we have the the story that was handed down and made into a Walt Disney picture, but it shows female culture as witches, as unicorns, as magical beings, which is what the devil assigned to each of us, wants for the women. I'm a tricksy kind of person. You can be cool without being deceptive, a liar, a thief, a murderer, an outright cheat of your own soul. That's what this spirit's after. And it will chase after you and really argue that it wants to be your friend. Hypnotic eyes. You may or may not have these experiences directly, but I think everybody wonders, why did I do that? And I'm telling you, one of the reasons is that there's a spiritual universe around us, and input comes from that spiritual universe. And some of it is looking for food. So here we have an ancient Greek sarcophagus, and the woman figure is holding the morning glory tendril and the morning glory flower. So you can see how ancient this stuff is. Again, another picture of the lion and the unicorn battling for the crown. And this one kind of speaks, if you look at the tail of the unicorn, it's got the morning glory leaf. The full-grown leaf looks like a devil's tail. Speaking of the devil, here we have the Baphomet, which the Templars, the first international bankers, were accused of worshipping. You see in his groin area, you see the symbol of the caduceus, or the medical symbol, two twin serpents coming up around a winged rod. On his forehead you see the mark of the beast, or the five-pointed star, and in his head the light of Lucifer, which is the morning glory seed capsule. And you see that in three parts where I'm kind of revealing what isn't being shown. So what's the object of the tree of knowledge, the spirit behind it, or Satan, the great accuser? He'd like to collect all the unicorns and create a culture of self-worshipping, self-loving, cold-hearted whelps of the devil. Simple. Here we have the morning glory. You can see again the spiral before it opens. That is the hallucinogenic heavenly blues. Now, the tradition, if you're going to try to get female culture to go along with this spirit that's sitting on their shoulder and whispering in their ear, you're going to have to make the devil still look bad. So you've got the Red Bull of the Mountain, or Manta Mascaria, or Satan, versus Lucifer in this magical tradition called the Last Unicorn, where the Red Bull, or Brahmanism, drives the magical morning glory users, female culture, magic users. I think you can see it. There's just a natural draw to be tricksy, and that comes from that spirit. And in this movie, the Red Bull chases these good unicorns into the sea. So here we have another image where the magical horn of the unicorn is keeping the Satan at bay. Kind of ties the moon to the unicorn. Here, in the Louvre, you have the morning glories. So France was basically owned and run by the Freemason Napoleon, and during that time he collected a bunch of war loot in the museum called the Louvre. Up in the ceiling you can see the morning glory horn, signified with lightning bolts and wings, so representing their attachment to the occult Faustian traditions of the secret societies, which are being run down as we work through these things. But we've left it to a degree, as educators, as myself as a man, we're leaving a lot of this, because it has to be, in the hands of women. So they have to make that decision. Which do I love more? The God who is like a great mighty lion, and so I'm kind of afraid of him, but he loves me, but I'm scared that he'll judge me. I don't want to get judged. Versus the unicorn, which just wants to wrap its tentacles around you and love you so much, just eat you up. So here we have kind of a, I'll lean over. Here we have a young Goldilocks with the crown, and she's trying to make that difficult decision, the soul deciding whether it will serve the unicorn or Lucifer, or whether it will serve the Lion of Judah, Tree of Life, Christ. So I guess you can kind of see the unicorn isn't really the one that we're really describing, isn't very pretty. It looks a lot more like this. And you can see our culture's painting of the zebra, kind of sort of lion-striped zebra, but it's this entity with a ring on its tail is really a lot more like what the Luciferian spirit is like. You think it's going to take you on wild adventures, a wicked Harley, but really the wickedness you get is Isis and head chopping off and dubious Jezebelian behaviors, kind of like Machiavellian behaviors. So in response to this crisis, this spiritual awareness that we are under attack and that women are particularly focused upon by the spirit of Lucifer and Satan, a bunch of you young women decided to dye your hair partially red in recognition of this. Yeah, there really is an entity that is pushing me to choose pride and arrogance, money and power over people instead of power through people with love, instead of grace, instead of understanding. So you see here what probably the men haven't noticed, hopefully they have. There are millions and millions and millions of you, and I think you know to whom that crown belongs. And I think that you know we're home free for the 1,000-year reign with Christ as Christ's, but under his authority, under God. All things will be put at Christ's foot, and then he'll put them at God's feet. But not until he conquers all things. So let's do it. Yay, Lions. Alright, that's it for now. Ciao.